So today, you're welcome to my YouTube channel, and I still remain your instructor. So this is Cyril, and today I'm going to talk about cloud deployment models. All right. So for those of you that are joining me, feel free to subscribe and like and share this content. All right. So today's topic is going to be on deployment models, and we are going to learn about the different approaches to cloud deployment. Alright, so what are the agendas for today? So these are the topics: introduction to cloud computing, overview of deployment models. We are going to learn the four major types, which is the public, private, hybrid, community cloud. Then we talk about comparison of the models, the factors to be considered, the case studies for each of the models. Then we're going to have like an open floor where we give our Q&A session afterwards. Now, introduction to cloud computing. So cloud computing is the practice of using network of remote servers hosted on the internet to store and manage, process data rather than using your local PC. Alright, so some of the benefits is the flexibility, high availability, scalability, and also the cost efficiency it renders. When you look at the picture I just gave in, it shows the cloud computing architecture, and in this end you have the front end and the back end. So the front end is the interface you use to access the cloud computing resources. For example, you could actually use your computer, your personal computer, to access it using your remote desktop clients, or you could also use your remote desktop connection. Now this interface allows you to access the compute, which is virtual machine, the storage accounts, the networking, and also your database. So if you look at the infrastructure, you notice that the backend is being managed by the cloud service provider, which involves the application, the services, the storage, and infrastructure. But in your own side, you only manage the client's infrastructure side, which has to do with your configurations and connectivity. All right. So the next we have is the overview of cloud deployment models. And the cloud deployment models represent the exact category of cloud environment based on proprietorship and size. So actually we have about 4, and all these deployment models are actually being addressed based on the capital expenditure you get or the operating cost. So for example, you don't want to buy hardware, you don't want to be responsible for hardware cooling and network and security, you could actually go into public cloud models. But if you want to do those yourself, then you go into private cloud models. So we're going to learn more about this in the next slide. However, if you look at the picture by the side, it shows some of the description of each of the models. Here we have the public, the private, the hybrid, and also the community cloud. So as it's public means like, okay, it's accessed everywhere in the world. Private is just for your own usage. Then for the hybrid is more like the mixture of the public and the private cloud system. Then the community cloud is just basically for maybe medical facility or for the government. So these are actually based on compliance of security basically. All right, so let's go into the public cloud models. Now, the cloud infrastructure for public cloud is made available to general public, so industries, and it's owned by the organization selling cloud services. For example, we have the AWS, which is the Amazon Web Services. We have the Microsoft Azure. Then we also have the Google Cloud. So there are actually some cons and pros for each of these cloud models actually. So for the public cloud, if you are starting small, maybe like a flat business, you don't want to upscale, you don't want to spike in, you could actually use the public cloud because it gives you cost effectiveness, and also it can also be easy to scale up if you want to. But for the cons is that it's less controlled. So you don't actually have enough control about all this infrastructure because Microsoft have their data center in everywhere in the world, and they are actually responsible for anything with their hardware, storage, and cooling. So when you see the picture by the side, you see we have the clouds, Google Cloud, we have the Microsoft Azure, we have the AWS. So all these are like the major public cloud deployment models for that we have. And now let's go dive into the private cloud model. So this cloud infrastructure is operated by private organizations known as on-premise. So on-premise is just using your local machine and you developing all your servers and your hardware all by yourself. So you actually need some IT professional skills for you to actually run this kind of service model. All right, some of the key features are high security. So you actually have more security leverage compared to public cloud. And also you can control your hardware infrastructure all by yourself. But however, the cons can be very, very much because now you get to spend more because it's high costly. It's also more complex to manage. So some of the organizations that actually leverage on these private cloud services models is the VMware, for example, the OpenStack. So these are like the major private cloud organizations that exist. Now, if you look at the architecture, you'll notice that in private cloud system, the database, the legacy system, the hardware and applications, all of them are being bounded by a boundary perimeter. So it means that you have the access and you can control every resources in the data center inside that boundary perimeters. So if you have a public user trying to access your private cloud, they don't have access because they are blocked. So they kind of have limited access to you that own your private cloud. So because of high security, people intend to have their private cloud system. For example, let's say the US government, the FBI system, they prefer to have their private cloud. All right, so now let's go into the hybrid cloud system. The hybrid cloud system is more like the combination of public cloud, right, and the private cloud. Now, this is a composition of these two clouds or these two or more clouds that remain unique entity but are bound together by standardized or proprietary technology that enable easy access to resources between clouds. So some of the features is that it's flexible, optimize resources, and some of the pros is that it's balanced approach and it's also cost efficiency because sometimes you may not really need to buy much hardware. You could just scale up with public cloud instead of you buying multiple hardwares. But some of the disadvantages, which are the cons, is that it's complex to manage because you need some identity, you need some external users in your on-premises, you also need some Azure users, for example, if you use Microsoft, and you also need some AWS users, which if you use AWS platform. So if you look at it, it's a bit complex to go around. And some of the examples is AWS Outpost and Microsoft Azure Stack. So these are actually some of the examples of the hybrid cloud system. We still have other organizations like IBM, we have the Oracle, then we also have Alibaba Cloud and Heroku. So these are some organizations that are implementing the hybrid cloud systems whereby they use the public and they can also connect using the intersection between the private and public cloud models to carry out their activities. Alright, so the picture by the side also portrays some of the organizations currently running this facility. Alright, so now this brings us to the next cloud model, which is community cloud. Alright, so a cloud infrastructure that's shared by several organizations with common concerns. So what are the concerns are the security side of things, the quality and also compliance. So some organizations may prefer that they are compliance focused and they don't want their data to be outside in the public. So for example, some industry like healthcare sector, the governments like for example Azure Germany, Azure USA, all those are actually community cloud system where they don't want you to have major of their data outside. So for example, we have Azure China. So these are community cloud system whereby they use the public cloud, but then they still have some compliance which is based off their local environment. So some of the cons is that they have limited control compared to private cloud. But some of the major benefit is that you get to cost share and you also get to collaborate. And you also have high security compliance. All right, so comparison of deployment models. So here we have the public, private, and the community cloud. Okay, so factors. Um, so when you look at the comparison, everything based off on cost, control, security, and scalability. And some of the key takeaways is that some of them might be expensive based on cost, and some of them might be less when it comes to scalability, and also when it comes to security. So look at the picture by the side. You notice that we have um, overall reliability for private cloud is high. Then when you look at cost, for example, for public cloud, you notice the cost is the lowest. So if you want to go into cloud computing, for example, you should consider public cloud if you don't have enough funds. But if you have enough funds or you have enough money to spend, you can actually go into private cloud because you need to buy hardware, you need to provide power, and also for cooling. So also, if you actually have the technical skill, you can also go for private cloud because you need a very high technical professional skill to set up and use this facility. This also boils down to community cloud models and also hybrid cloud. But when it comes to overall reliability, you notice that private cloud it's on the high side, and also hybrid cloud is on the medium side. So these are the key takeaways I would like you to understand. So, but then everything to boil down to cost. So you could actually have a very, very high capital expenditure, and then you now consider should you work with a very low operational cost. So if you want to go with high capital expenditure, then you should ensure that you are trying to go into the public cloud side of things. Then for lower operational cost, then I think hybrid public cloud is the best practice, not the private cloud. All right. So now, what are the factors that affect when choosing a model? No, so like I said earlier, the security, the budget, scalability, and compliance are the major ones. So when you look at this picture here, you want to deploy, for example, a virtual machine in AWS. What you need is Elastic Compute Cloud, which is the EC2. Then you want to deploy virtual machines like VMs for Azure. Then you can deploy from the Azure platform. But you want to deploy compute engines. Then for virtual machines, you need the Google GCP. So there are different public clouds, which I said earlier, and the major ones are the AWS, the GCP, and Azure. So if you want to design a website, for example, and you want to launch it on your cloud, for AWS, you need the Elastic Beanstalk. For Azure, you need the app service. For GCP, you need the app engine. So these are actually more like the different resources that are available in all these models. But however, I'm going to give us some of the factors you need to consider if you want to run flat and also spike. So for example, you want to have like a small business and you want it to just be on the flat side. You don't really want to spend more. So you could consider compute side for public, and your storage can be public. Your network can also be public. Let's say you want to spike, like you want to increase your business. Like say on a Black Friday, you still want people to buy your product online. You could also consider public cloud because you get to scale. So you get to scale for your compute, for your storage, and also for networking. Now, but for instance, you want to have like an average business where you need about, let's say, 1,000 or 5,000 employees or 5,000 customers trying to get to your business. You can actually just maybe have like a flat side of private, and private for your compute, storage, and network. But if you want to scale, I want to advise you to go and buy more hardware. Then you can then consider going into public cloud. So in this sense, you could actually have your data or your website deployed on Azure or AWS, for example. Then if you actually scale your compute, storage, and network, you don't have any costs for alarm. And this also boils down to large organization as well. So these are the factors you need to consider when you want to go into cloud computing, and what you need to also consider when you want to upskill. Alright, I'm going to give us 2 case studies, which is number 1, examples of companies that uses public cloud. Now, Netflix uses AWS cloud because they use what they call CDN. So CDN actually drop most of their video resources closer to environment regions, so you have like less latency when you're watching or streaming your videos. So Netflix don't want to like set up their own infrastructure, for example. They just leverage on the public cloud AWS platform. So with the CDN technology, all their content have been available in different regions. So you don't need to bother about buffing your video or streaming your video with very high low latency. So it's going to be faster while watching your video. So also the case study I want to share about is also IBM Red Hat. So IBM Red Hat uses hybrid cloud because they also have their own public cloud platform, and Red Hat also have their own private cloud. So they get to like collaborate and harness this feature of cloud computing. So I'm going to give us a picture which depicts the cloud deployment models. So here we have public, hybrid cloud. These are the deployment models. Then we also have the service model, which are the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. But everything boils down to cloud computing, right? So we have the deployment, you have the service model, and it gives us some of the features that we can get, which are on-demand services, optimized servers utilization, broad network access, disaster and migration recovery. So these are the case studies that I feel are very important when you want to go into cloud. You need to know, okay, what service models am I bringing in and what deployment models should I harness? All right. So these are things you need to consider before you then say, okay, fine, this is the time to go into cloud computing. All right. So now the conclusion and the question and answer session. So I'm going to give us a summary of this, and the recap is the key points to focus on. Are you considering the security side? Are you considering the scaling side? Are you considering the cost? These are the major things you need to consider first before you jump into cloud service models or cloud deployment models. So the importance of choosing the right models are very important to be considered. However, I'm going to show you this picture which shows the differences between the public and the private cloud. So when you look at the public cloud, you see it has less control over hardware because Microsoft actually control their hardware. They put these things inside the deep sea. And they also have data centers in different parts of the world. I think Microsoft currently has about 64 regions, I think going up to about 104 at the moment. And currently they have some in South Africa North and some also in West Africa. So if you see, these companies are actually developing their stuff, but you have less control of their hardware. Increase in reliability, flexible capacity, reduce carbon footprint, lower barrier to entry, allowing you to be more agile. So there are actually several benefits of clouds. And also when you look at private cloud, you notice that it has greater choice of hardware environments because you get to choose what hardware you want for yourself. Static capacity. So static in the sense that when you buy this hardware, you use it based on the specification you got it. All right. Then it suits legacy application requirement if refactoring isn't viable. Then you can also customize based on your own the description or what you actually want to use your deployment for. So it's based on your own discretion. You could customize and it meets governance requirements. So these are like the basic differences between cloud and public. So if you have any question, you could drop it in the comment down below. I will be very glad to assist you going forward. And please don't forget to like, share, and also subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be dropping the next content on why should you go into cloud computing in 2024.